friends, welcome to the All Canadian Reptile Girl. I'm Annaliese, and we are not where I normally film.
Dadoy?
Yeah, Dadoy.
That is because today we came into London, Ontario, Canada, not London, England, to have a tour of the Reptilia Zoo in the Westmount Mall. I'm super excited to see all of the amazing animals that they have here, and one of the zookeepers, my friend Cody, was even nice enough to come in on his day off to give us this tour. So let's go see all of the cool things that they have here. Okay, so one of the first things I noticed walking into the zoo portion of this place is how big and enriching the enclosures are. I mean, look at this. This this is a black and white Argentine tegu, just like Jub Jub is. But look how big this enclosure is for her. And she is like half of Jub Jub's size. That is amazing. Like, just look how much room she gets, and she's only this big. That is fantastic. But even more amazing, look at this ball python enclosure. Do you see how high up he is? I mean, yeah, he might be killing that pothos, but that is absolutely incredible that they gave him this much space. The only critique I could possibly have is maybe a tiny bit more clutter, but here's the thing. This is a zoo. The animals need to be on display. They can balance the animal feeling safe and secure and the viewers and patrons of this place still being able to see and enjoy that animal. But honestly, they give them so much substrate to dig, which is perfect. They give them height, they give them room along the bottom and like vertically as well. They clearly give their animals so much care and so much room, and that is just amazing. Found him. I am here with my friend Cody. Why don't you describe a bit about your position here and what Reptilia is in general?
Of course, yeah. Reptilia here, we are the largest indoor reptile zoo specific in Canada. We have this location here is, I believe, around 35,000 square feet with 28,000 of those square feet dedicated to these animals.
Yeah, no, you have fantastic and huge enclosures that are absolutely mind-blowing.
Yep, and the vast majority of these enclosures were actually designed by myself with our other two full-time keepers, Savannah and Will. We did a lot of the rock work on these enclosures, so we laid out styrofoam and leftover concrete bags to build all of our rock work that you see behind me, build all the basic shapes, and then we had a construction crew come in and spray everything with that mortar, smooth it out, and then we went back in, did all the epoxy for the ponds as well as all the paint work in these enclosures. So.
Well, you did an incredible job.
Thank you, we really
for sure.
appreciate it. Seeing it come to fruition and seeing all these exhibits finalized with animals in them was worth the 9 months of grueling construction work that we ended up doing.
Yeah, I bet it would be.
So I'm the lead zookeeper here at the London location of Reptilia. So basically I manage anything to do with the animals. So staffing for our zookeepers, I manage a lot of the basic health stuff with the animals, cleaning, the routine, scheduling, everything like that. Pretty much anything that involves these animals ends up coming back to me at some point or another. I also help with figuring out what animals are going to go in what exhibits and things like that, as well as with our facility managers and things like that. We coincide on what can go where and what animals we're able to bring into the zoo.
Where did those animals come from?
So the vast majority of our animals are either surrenders, rescues, donations, or confiscations.
Oh, okay.
So that's why you'll see a lot of animals that you would normally see just as pets. We get a lot of that where it's like, oh, the zoo is filled with just pet animals. And it's because a lot of these animals were kept as pets either improperly or the owners didn't want them, kid was going off to college and parents couldn't take care of it. They're brought to the zoo and surrendered to us here. We have about, I would say, probably right around 200 to 220 animals in the zoo at the moment. And like I said, over 80-85% of them are surrenders, rescues, donations. The only animals that we would go out of our way to be searching for are going to be the very rare, unique, the stuff that people aren't going to own as pets, but people want to see, like our Nile crocodiles, our freshwater cobra, and things like that. We also try and deal with breeders as well for those animals. We will only purchase animals with a captive bred and born origin. Anything that has an originally wild collected origin, we will not purchase because we don't want to support that trade. However, if an animal with a wild collected origin does need a good home, we'll obviously not deny that animal a good home. Like our Savannah Monitor Bubbles to my left here, he was originally wild collected like all Savannah Monitors in Canada are, but he was a rescue situation where his lady just had no idea what she was doing caring for them, couldn't care for them anymore, and was brought to us, so we have them here now in our facility, giving them pretty much everything they could ever ask for and then some.
Yeah, that's very kind of you to give these animals kind of a second chance at a happy life.
And that's exactly it. A lot of these animals would have been euthanized otherwise, so we give them that second chance at life here.
Yeah, or they would have been just put out into the wild and died that way,
Exactly.
which is
A
an
lot
awful way to
these
go.
species here are native North American native turtle exhibit, as well as our red ear slider ponds. A lot of them were threatened to be re-released into the wild if we hadn't taken them.
Yeah, that sucks that people take on these animals and underestimate the responsibility, and then the animals suffer for that.
Majorly, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the major flaws in our hobby,
Yeah.
but
You see it with any animal, people who
You
buy
do.
dogs not realizing what breed they're getting into. You see it
Yes.
with reptiles, people not realizing what the species is either capable of or is
Birds.
actual standard. Birds are a major one, being a massive commitment. Whenever you have animals, you have to have the love, but you also have to have that knowledge behind the love to be able to
Yes.
give these animals what they properly need.
exactly.
You're always going to get people who love those animals, but they don't get the animals. They don't understand them, and that's where the big issues becomes. There's a misunderstanding about animals.
Yeah, that is an absolutely perfect way to sum it up and put it. Couldn't have said it better.
Thank you. We'll come behind the scenes and we're going to show you a little bit about what we do on a day-to-day basis as zookeepers, some of the cleaning regimens, some of our scheduling, our bookkeeping that we do, as well as how we determine what animals are going to be a certain level of quote-unquote danger.
Okay then, lead the way.
So we'll come over to our North American native turtle exhibit. So what you'll see when we come over here is going to be, we always have on any exhibit that has an animal in it, we have a label on the door. And that label will determine, it gives us their common name, their scientific name, and then generally a level for the animal. Level 1 being harmless. So even if it's a very unlikely to bite, and even if it does bite, it's probably not going to do any real damage. It might break the skin if you're unlucky.
It'll just give you a bad hour, not necessarily
Exactly.
a bad week or month or no other
Precisely.
bad day ever again.
Yeah. We have anything up to level 5 animals, level 2 being slightly more dangerous, maybe a little more likely to bite, but not necessarily dangerous. Level 3 being animals that are probably going to end up with stitches and things like that if they do bite. It's going to be some of our monitor lizards, our big snapping turtles, things like that. Level 4 being on the more dangerous side. That's where we start getting into our giant snakes, like our Burmese pythons, reticulated pythons, American alligators. And then we do have a level 5 animal, that is our Nile crocodiles and Nile crocodiles alone. And that is just because of how big and impressive they are. They do have the potential to be a life-ending animal. And as you guys can see, we have the Nile crocodile exhibit labeled properly with the level of danger, what the potential is for injury and things like that. And then we also, for any of the bigger animals or potentially dangerous animals, we have these big charts to help avoid any kind of bites, any kind of incidents that way, so people give those a read over before they even enter the exhibit. Where we take every precaution necessary to ensure that that can never happen.
Yes.
And then you'll notice we have these charts here. So with these charts that we do, we take care of any information. So if they've been fed and what they fed, if they've taken it, if they've shed their skins. With turtles, we usually leave that blank because when they're shedding, it's little bits at a time, not full sheds like a snake or some lizards will be. Then we'll do a urate feces check. We do water change check, weight checks, which normally are in here. However, with our herd sheets, we do them right up here. So it says when we weighed them last and what their weight was. Temperature for basking and ambient, humidity percentage, which as you see again is blank here, and that's because turtles living majority of their life in the water, really we don't worry about humidity as much as say we would with certain species of snakes and lizards and things like that.
Especially since they're spending the majority of their time in water.
Exactly. It's hard to measure the humidity underwater.
Yeah, it's water. That's the humidity.
And then again we do the misting percentages, which we don't mist this enclosure very often because again turtles are in the water, so we like to keep the land as dry as possible. And then anything else that we're doing, like backwashing our filters, doing plant trimmings and things like that will be recorded, and then we sign in at the end of our day to make sure who's done what.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're very meticulous with our record keeping to make sure everything is done to a certain schedule. And these filters here are actually pool sand filters, so they're rated for up to about 10,000 gallons of water each for these smaller units here.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so most of the exhibits only have between, I would say, 500 to 1,000, maybe 1,500 gallons that are rated for this pool sand filter. And then on things like our caimans, our Nile crocodiles, and our alligators, they all have pool sand filters anywhere from 1 to 3, depending on the exhibit, that are rated for up to about 45,000 gallons apiece. So we overfiltrate like crazy here to ensure cleanliness in the water facilities. Because as I'm sure you guys are aware, turtles, crocodilians, and any aquatic species can be very, very messy and produce a ton of waste.
We used to have yellow belly sliders, so we had 2, and then a stink pot. So
absolutely
they need
ridiculous
so much room
Yeah.
and so much maintenance.
Yeah, so instead of going the route of fish filters and things like that, we went with pool sand filters that are basically a little better equipped to handle mass amount of waste and debris at a time.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's really actually a good idea.
Significantly cheaper this route as well.
Ooh, well that also would have been nice to know.
Yeah. So one of the animals we can bring out for us is a false water cobra. Even though they are technically a rear-fanged venomous species, they are not medically significant. They have never caused a human fatality. The worst you're going to get is some swelling, a little bit of irritation in the area.
Almost like a bee sting.
Exactly, almost like a bee sting. You'll get maybe a little bit of swelling in the area if you've gotten a large envenomation. However, as far as venomous animals go, they're pretty much harmless. The only time you would really have to be worried about them is if you have an allergic reaction to their bite.
And even if they do end up biting you, it's not necessarily that it's going to be an envenomation if it's just a tag and defense, right?
Exactly. The vast majority of the time a snake bite, even from this species, is a slap and a pinprick at the very worst, unless you get a food response bite where they chew onto you a little bit.
And
but
then those rear fangs actually have a chance to get in, right?
Exactly. Yep. So I'm just going to grab one of our snake hooks. So I always like to go in with a snake hook to make sure she's not in a food response mode. It helps me get her out, and then we can bring her out no problem at all.
Sounds good.
So each exhibit is locked as well. So we have a lock on every exhibit that has an animal, and every level of animal will have a different combination. Just so we don't end up risking someone who might be, say, trained on level 1 animals accidentally entering a level 3 or a level 4 animal exhibit.
Okay.
So again, we take safety incredibly serious here at the zoo. We go through every precaution necessary to prevent bites and to prevent any sort of injury. Alrighty, where is she? So like I said, this is her here. She's
beautiful.
a very, very good sized female. And you can see a fantastic attitude on her. Once she's realized she's just coming out to hang out, she has a very, very pleasant disposition there.
Yes.
Just totally relaxed with us here.
You beautiful girl. They're so strong too. Like they're
incredibly strong species. And that has a lot to do with what they're eating in the wild, which is pretty much everything with a backbone they're going to consume in the wild. So they have an incredibly powerful bite force as well as a very powerful body to subdue any prey that they're going to come across in the wild.
Okay, so I'm going to say this quickly because I am losing my voice, but I just want to give a proper thank you to my patron. You guys funded this trip, even though it wasn't like much between the gas and the ticket, but that was $50 my dad didn't have to spend today, so thank you so much for that. More than that, you guys give me the sort of access to be able to do this sort of thing and go into reptile zoos and talk to experts. You give me the access to sort of share how wonderful this hobby can truly be and share the love that people can have for these creatures and these animals. So I just wanted to say thank you to all of my patrons for all that they do to help me out and subsequently, hopefully, help out the hobby. If you want to be a patron, you can be at patreon.com/allcanadianreptilegirl. If you do become a patron, you can see a bunch of behind the scenes footage of just me and Cody chatting about stuff to do with the zoos and different animals. There are some really interesting conversations on there that no one else got to see or will get to see in this video. Even if you watch through the bloopers, you won't see everything. So, I don't know, some strong arguments there. Again, thank you all so much. You guys are absolutely amazing, but let's get back to the rest of the video. So when I'm saying that these enclosures are exceptional, this is what I'm talking about. There are 2 Nile crocodiles in here. They are both full grown. There's a male and a female. One in here is 12 feet, the other is 14 feet. They're both pushing like 1,400 pounds. They are absolutely massive. And when I saw the male's tail over there, just on the glass itself, you can conceptualize how big it is, but you do not understand how big it is until it is right in front of you. So that was really cool. But I mean, yeah, the animals are big, but look how big the enclosure is. Like, this is what I'm talking about. It is absolutely massive, and I can see they can go further back. Like over here, they can swim through into a section that you can't see. Nile crocodiles, which is what these guys are if I did not mention that earlier, are one of the biggest reptiles on the planet. They're just beautiful and adorable. Their little tummies. Well, I shouldn't say little, nothing about them is small. This is the female, by the way. She's just, they're mind-blowing. They're incredible. And I don't think I've ever seen a Nile crocodile like this close before. Absolutely insane. And she is so very smart. I assume the male is too, but he's sleeping, so that's not really helpful right now. But she is totally watching everything that's going on right now. She has shifted so she can see me a little better since I came up to the glass. So keyed in, and that is one of the main things about crocodilians, is they are really, really smart, like freaky smart. Yes, if you move fast by them, they might revert back. They probably will revert to base instinct and snap. But they are also so smart. Like, there's a species of caiman that is smarter than the majority of dogs and can be trained just as easily as a golden retriever. That is insane. And I mean, I guess it's probably good that these can be trained because they're quite big. That would be a bit problematic. But she's very sweet, and I love her snaggletoothedness. This will probably end up being the highlight of my day, especially the shock of seeing just the sliver of the tip of the tail of the male over there on the glass. That was just speechless. I'm speechless. So you mentioned a couple of times that you have lots of safety features in place to keep the keepers and the animals safe.
Yep.
Do you want to maybe explain a few of those?
Yeah, so the Nile crocodiles are one of the best examples that I like to use for just the amount of safety precautions we go through in these exhibits, and to make sure we're as safe as possible, not only for our benefit, but for the animals as well. So for the Nile crocodiles, we have a minimum of 3 keepers entering the exhibit at any point in time. No one is allowed to enter on their own in this exhibit. So the 3 keepers, basically we have 1 keeper to do whatever work is needed to be done, as generally speaking, and then we have 2 keepers, each one keeping an eye on 1 crocodile, relaying that information to the person in the exhibit if they're watering plants, going into the water, anything like that. Now, when we do have to enter the water into the exhibit, some of the other locations will drain the tanks completely. It's a little bit easier. The crocodiles become a little bit sluggish. When we were building this zoo, we wanted to find a way so we didn't have to drain what is potentially 50,000 gallons of water every time we enter the exhibit. So what we ended up doing here was on our large bridge over on the far end of the exhibit, just behind that front wall that you'll see there, there's 2 big pieces of 1-inch thick plexiglass. So that glass, that plexiglass, is actually dropped behind the bridge. The crocodiles are lured behind the bridge, that plexiglass is dropped down, so then it's a 0 contact with those animals. So we can get into the front of this exhibit, do whatever we need to, while being completely safe and no contact with our crocodiles at all. There's a massive water space behind that bridge for them to sit in for a couple hours while we do anything we need to, like our algae scrubs, a water change, and anything like that.
Well, thank you so much, Cody, for taking the time to have this tour with us and tell us a bit more about Reptilia and the animals here. I had a wonderful time, and I know you guys put a lot of hard work into these enclosures, and it really does show.
Thank you.
You and your staff here have done above and beyond,
Awesome.
Really. Thank you so much for coming in on your day off to let us do that. That was very generous of you.
No problem at all. I enjoy this so much. I love being able to talk about these animals and get a chance to chat about them. So it's not really work for me the same way as some other jobs are for people. And I thank you guys for coming into the zoo and giving us this opportunity to kind of talk about on a more public platform what we do and what Reptilia is all about.
So as I'm walking through this zoo, I see a couple of common themes. One of which being how big and amazing these enclosures are, and the other being how much care the staff is giving these enclosures and these animals. You know, as I'm walking through, I've seen multiple different staff members cleaning glass, spraying enclosures, feeding the animals, and just caring for these animals, and that is amazing to see, and sort of it to be out there while the zoo is open, that there is maintenance being done. I really like that, not only because it shows the reality of what owning some of these more exotic reptiles entails, but I don't know, it makes it feel authentic and actually caring for the animals. And like I said, these enclosures are above and beyond in size and in just catering to the animals' every possible whim of what it might want to do. It might want to climb, it might want to dig, it might want to stretch out as long as it can and still have so much room to spare for all of those activities.
So much extra space in our room to do activities.
They have big enough enclosures that they can go and hide and not have to see any of the people. Like one of Cody's favorites didn't want to come out of his little 2x4 that he was hanging out on and sleeping on, and that's perfectly fine. This is truly the reptile hobby putting its best foot forward, and I hope you all enjoyed the journey of taking a look behind the scenes and seeing just how amazing these creatures truly are. Thank you so much to my patrons for paying for this trip. You guys truly do help out, and thank you to all of you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little tour and some of the behind the scenes, getting a little bit of an insight to what a reptile zoo is like. Thank you to Cody and his staff, and until next time, remember to nurture all nature. Bye! I'm willing to bet that, oh, alligator. Sorry, I got distracted by the alligator. The axolotls are sleepy.